Welcome back, folks, to part 2 of our British GP review on Pits To Podium and the Inside Line F1 podcast. If you're wondering what this part 2 business is all about on the video, top right hand corner is the place to go. That's where you will find the first part. But on the audio, things are seamless. Welcome back in. And the question that we have to ask Kunal about this win for Lewis Hamilton is that, does it feel slightly hollow in a way?
It all depends how we see it. So in my view, the emotions we are all bringing to the table, Soumil, are, firstly the crash and our reaction to the crash, and then the penalty that Lewis got, which didn't stop him from winning the race. So our reaction to that race. So at some level, it feels a little hollow that, hey, Lewis was found guilty of eliminating his arch rival and found guilty by the FIA, not my words, the FIA's words. He was given a penalty, but he could still go and win the race. And that's what sort of makes it feel hollow. And like I said earlier, he actually, turned around and delivered a fantastic race. He drove to his strategy. He pulled off all the moves again into cops, a cop at which he had his incident with Max Verstappen. He showed how he could do it with the other drivers. And the point out here being that when he overtook Norris and when he overtook Charles Leclerc, he was clearly the faster driver. The incident with Max happened because both of them were matched for pace going into that corner. Both cars, both drivers were equally matched. That wasn't the case with Norris and Charles Leclerc, right? But that's where it sort of feels hollow. And then, of course, Lewis was aided by a team order, which, clearly again shows Mercedes is thinking of that 8th world title for Lewis. Obviously, they should think so, because that will rewrite all the Schumacher Ferrari memories that we all have by breaking that record.
And by the way, Bottas is still lower than Lando Norris in the championship standings, and so is Sergio Perez as well. Let that sink in. It is jaw-dropping how good Lando Norris has been. But more on him and Ferrari in a few moments. About the penalties, Kunal, about Mercedes and all the things that we saw and heard. During the break, we got an absolutely unbelievable piece of access from FIA and Formula One, where we saw the team radios, rather heard the team radios. You can't see team radio, right? But you heard the team radio of Michael Massey being phoned in firstly by Jonathan Wheatley, I think that's his name, Red Bull's chief engineer, and also by Toto Wolff. Now, Toto Wolff sent an email to Michael Massey and said that, okay, Michael, I sent you a diagram about where people should be side by side at Cops Corner. You know what should make the right decision. And Michael Massey just said one thing: I don't check my emails during race weekends. That is how focused you should be while doing your work, guys. Take an example of that. But seriously, Kunal, it felt a bit childish. That penalty, all the lobbying, it really felt that this crash turned Mercedes and Red Bull into school kids in a way. And do you think this sort of lobbying is getting a bit silly? It's a question asked by David Croft on the Sky F1 broadcast immediately when it happened. But it's worth a discussion. I think it genuinely feels a bit, I don't know, what's the right word am I looking for here? It's just a bit insane, a bit childish in a way.
I like how you put it, that they were like school kids going and complaining to the headmaster or the headmistress, Exactly. And but it just goes to show this actually has been happening for over the years, Soumil. It happens in the boardrooms. Now we are seeing it happening on the racetrack as well. As in, it's been happening on the racetrack. We have just been given access to it. And I really loved how we also saw this whole corporate hierarchy in place. Jonathan Wheatley, by the way, is the sporting director. When he spoke, and then Christian Horner spoke, it was like, hey, I'm escalating it to my boss, and that's where you're getting this, so you better listen to us. So that lobbying has always been around in the sport. We are now getting unparalleled access to that. And by the way, a great, management mantra from you when you're doing your work: do not check your emails, from you and from Michael Massey, Soumil.
Yeah, exactly. I'm still getting a hang of it. Michael Massey is just an expert at this stage. And also, a quick reminder, reason why Michael Massey was not able to do anything about it is because he's not the one who makes the decisions. I genuinely wasn't aware of that. It's Emanuele Pirro, and basically the lead steward of that race, who decides. And so Michael Massey, even if he did check his email, he'd sort of be powerless in a situation like that one, which is something that Toto Wolff and Christian Horner forgot not in the heat of the moment. By the way, fun discovery by Ted Kravitz. Toto Wolff was marching off, of course, to speak to the stewards, but he didn't know where the stewards were, so he ended up going to the media center first. That was an error he made right there. Almost comical, that one. It's just a bit
He
crazy.
probably wanted to call for a trial by media to get Lewis exonerated from that crash. But they'd be laughing. They'll be happy that Lewis got away a little leniently from such a crash. That's my gut feeling about this, Soumil.
Exactly. The second most lenient penalty that they could have given was the one awarded to Lewis Hamilton. Again, we answered the question early on, was the win made a bit too hollow? But as we discussed in part 1, that's just the difference between Hamilton and Verstappen and all the other drivers down there. Just on another level. But it's time for something special, something that we want to present to you. I think after one race weekend, and I'm so glad that Sundaram is back. Here goes. It's time for our stats review by Sundaram right here.
Thank you, Soumil. It's time for our usual stats review segment. Biggest talking points from the British Grand Prix today obviously are Lewis Hamilton winning the race after taking a 10-second time penalty, and Max Verstappen, the pole sitter, crashing out on lap 1. So the stats from today's review are going to be around these two characters. First of all, Lewis Hamilton became the third driver after Ayrton Senna and Michael Schumacher to have the privilege of driving around a section that's named after them. As you obviously know, the start-finish straight at Silverstone is now called the Hamilton Straight. Now, we had a red flag today at the British Grand Prix, so that's the 8th time a race at Silverstone has seen the red flag. But the interesting point is the last 4 ones have all seen British drivers win the race, including today. Lewis Hamilton took his 99th victory in Formula One, and he's very, very close to that century landmark, something that he's going to probably achieve sooner than later. But his 8th win at Silverstone meant he's tied the record for the most victories at any one circuit, a record that he shares with Michael Schumacher, who has 8 wins at Magny-Cours, and Lewis Hamilton himself, who has 8 wins at the Hungaroring, something that he's going to try and surpass next week, in the next couple of weeks in Hungary. And another record that Hamilton did break today is the one for the most consecutive podiums at any one circuit. He has 9 podiums at Silverstone since 2014, if I'm not wrong. Moving on to the Red Bull camp, things are going to be pretty heated up at Milton Keynes today. Why? Because this is the first time we've not had a Red Bull car on the podium since the 2020 Sakir Grand Prix. That's quite a while ago. And the Red Bull team go back home with just 3 points today, courtesy of Max Verstappen's pole yesterday. But Mercedes go home with 43 points, and that's obviously benefited them to a great extent in the drivers and the constructors standings. And the last stat for today is that Max Verstappen has the highest retirement percentage amongst drivers who've completed at least 2 seasons since 2015. 2015 is the year when Max Verstappen debuted in Formula One. Now, obviously, it's pretty debatable because a lot of retirements of his also were because of mechanical issues and ill luck, like we saw at Azerbaijan. But it's a fairly high number, something which Max Verstappen is going to hope doesn't increase more in the 2021 season, because he's obviously battling for the championship. Well, that was the stats review. I hope you guys liked it. I'll catch you guys at the Hungarian Grand Prix.
Got to love it. Seriously, every single one of those stats, especially the one about Sakir that he mentioned. It's been a while. It's seriously been a while since Red Bull haven't quite been right there in a situation where they haven't had any one of their cars on the podium. But we've discussed about Max, we've discussed about Sergio Perez. Now, Kunal, I think it is a very, very good time to discuss about Ferrari. And I've got this question in my mind, and I'd love to know your take on that. Did Ferrari blow it, or did they over-deliver? Leclerc was gutted, by the way, on the team radio when he, of course, finished the race and realized that he hadn't won it. And he, of course, by the way, had led it all the way through until lap 50 or something thereabout. And genuinely, did they blow it? I think quite the opposite, I think Ferrari punched way above their weight. Had it not been for slow pit stops, and a slow pit stop, for Carlos Sainz, more on that in a second, they would have had an even better weekend. And this time, it's a bit alarming that Ferrari, and that's something that Alex Albon mentioned on the F1 post-race show, that they can do it at Monaco, and they can do it at a circuit that is just the bang opposite at Silverstone as well. They've got that package sort of working a little bit better now, finally.
It definitely seems like that. In the build-up to the British Grand Prix, one of the things that both Ferrari drivers actually said is, we are expecting a repeat of our tire issues from France. And that's what if you guys remember, that's what happened. At the French Grand Prix, the tires dropped off, and the issues that we've been joking about for Ferrari's tires. This time, the issue was with maybe a software or a sensor issue with Charles Leclerc's Ferrari power unit. And it was 2019 Bahrain all over again in our minds. And to my mind, it was also 2019. Was it 2019? Yeah, 2019 Monza when Charles and Lewis went wheel to wheel as well. But I think Ferrari definitely over-delivered this Grand Prix weekend. And it sort of feels good when we don't have expectations, and then suddenly the red cars are the ones in the fight. I think it's when it's the reverse. It's where our emotions take over and be like, oh my God, that's Ferrari being Ferrari yet again. So fantastic stuff by Charles. I think every second or lap, every Charles went onto the radio, we were wondering if he's saying anything more about the power unit. Guys, it's cut off again. That became his standard copy-paste message. Or we were wondering, is this where he'll turn around and say, my tires are finished? He'll probably learn from Lewis and say, my tires are gone. And Ferrari would reply saying, copy understood, we are looking into it. One of those things. And yes, slow pit stop for Carlos Sainz, which he was pretty downbeat in the post-race interviews, that I sat through. And he was convinced he could have been P5 had there not been a slow pit stop. But slow pit stops, Soumil, lots of drivers had slow pit stops.
Yeah.
Lando Norris also had a slow one. Yeah. And the other puzzling slow stop for me was Lewis Hamilton's stop, because he had the 10-second penalty, but he also had a 4-second long pit stop. So I don't know if Mercedes, penalized themselves by a second or two more, or they just genuinely had a slow stop there.
Like challenger tournaments in tennis, right, where you count your own lines and you count whether the ball is out or not. But generally, a word on pit stops. I was wondering, what is this all about? What is this all happening? And then I thought, well, I think McLaren, Ferrari and Mercedes were just following the memo that FIA sent out for Hungary. Only thing is they forgot to read the date. So they thought it was starting right here at Silverstone. So they said, okay, we'll go for slow pit stops. I didn't think they expected to be this much. But the context is on the battle. The context is on McLaren and Ferrari. And I swear, this was such a race weekend. Again, if we're wondering where Sainz could have finished without that slow stop, imagine where Lando Norris could have been in a situation like that. Imagine if he didn't have those issues right there. This battle, Kunal, I don't think it has that sort of headline quality that Verstappen versus Hamilton does. But it is a solid midfield battle that generally, if that battle at the top doesn't happen, I think this is good enough for me to tune in and watch the race. You can't tune in these days, but log in to watch the race.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put it this way, Soumil, that, at the end of the day, Lando Norris was convinced that he could also have been on the podium had it not been for a slow stop. So a fantastic day for drivers wanting to be on the podium. They were just let down by slower pit stops, I would say. But so nostalgic to see McLaren versus Ferrari at its peak. All four of their drivers were in the mix, Daniel Ricciardo included. He was right up there next to Lando Norris. And, he's just going to hope to repeat this performance before he can take the leap forward in front and finish in front of Lando Norris at some point.
Absolutely. But what about Fernando Alonso today, Kunal? We pointed him out as someone to watch out for. Of course, after the sprint race yesterday, he was pretty good today. I think P7, he said in his post-race interview, was the maximum that they could extract, and he's done that. 5 races in a row that Alpine have gotten points. They're on to something right here.
Absolutely. Fernando was definitely the star of the whole weekend, He was shining on Saturday in sprint, F1 sprint. And then he was shining as well. He's been over delivering as we've always known him to deliver. And that's one of the things about the British Grand Prix weekend. We all signed up thinking we're going to see 2 starts, right? And we actually ended up having 3 starts. 2 starts today, 1 start yesterday, and each of the starts was fascinating by itself. And the only driver not fascinating in the starts was Valtteri Bottas. He actually went backwards at one point, at both the starts. Yes. So something for him to look into. And my funniest moment of the race, and I don't know if this was broadcast on the live Formula One feed, was.
I know.
Was it?
I know. I think it was. Yep.
was when Lance Stroll suddenly went onto the radio and he said, "Hey guys, there's something amiss." And then he says, "Can you check the car? Can you check the tires?" He said, "Maybe the helicopter flew a little too low." I've never seen something like that before. Have you?
It's just mind blowing. Got me laughing, that one. Saw it online, that. And also his teammate as well. I know we haven't spoken about this yet. So it's a sad note to end on, but I think maybe we shouldn't put an ice bag on the top of our head before going for a race restart, because seemingly, if you follow the after this, therefore, because of this sort of mantra, that's the reason why Sebastian Vettel became the old Sebastian Vettel. Sadly, not the one we liked, though. The 2018 version is what we ended up seeing, and he spun out. But Aston Martin, man, these guys have been on fire. It's coming up with great humor all the way through. But a tremendous race weekend all the way around, Kunal. Next up, we go to Hungary. That one is again going to be intriguing because traditionally it's been a Mercedes track, but the last time we were there, Verstappen put up a big fight. Hamilton, of course, stole it towards the end. I don't know. I'm very, very excited for this one. But your final thoughts as we leave the British Grand Prix and sort of enter the last race before the summer break?
Well, the title battle is as tough and as close as we would love for it to be. As much as, Max would have loved the cushion of 32 odd points plus a few more from this weekend, I'm pretty happy that the two drivers are neck and neck. Of course, we wouldn't want them to sort of be involved in crashes the way they were today.
Yep.
But I guess both drivers will get wiser and smarter the next time they are locked in wheel-to-wheel battle. That's my reading, Soumil. How about you?
100%. I think it was inevitable, as I mentioned early on, 3 years in the making. So it had to happen at some point. The question was when, not if. We finally got the answer. And now it sort of adds the spice to it. It sort of makes it extra special, extra spicy, knowing that, unfortunately, Verstappen had to go to the hospital. He was injured. He took it personally, this one. And it may just be more emotional than ever, which means more rewarding for us as a storyline. And I hope, frankly, that Verstappen is okay. That's the biggest priority right now. But folks, thank you for watching this episode, and thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed this one, and if you did, you don't know. I don't need to tell you what to do, right? You've been watching videos on YouTube and listening to podcasts on Spotify, whatever platform it is, for years now. Subscribe, follow, like, share, and all the likes. Make sure that you give us a very good review. And thank you so much for being a part of this one. Folks, we shall see you for the Hungarian GP preview coming up next time. Until then,